Welcome, and thank you for tuning in once again. You are listening to the account bringing you the news report for day 349 on the war in Ukraine. Today, I only have one article I want to point out. The rest of the news updates are grouped into the usual situation inside Ukraine, with an update on the latest appointments, the occupied territories, Russia and Belarus, with an update to the Ivan Losev dream saga, and the international developments, including several updates on the topic of German tanks for Ukraine. But as usual, we start with the flashpoints along the front. Novoselivske. Russia is constantly launching small-scale attacks on Novoselivske without any notable success. Serhiy, head of the Luhansk Regional Military Administration, shared this video of destroyed Novoselivske on Facebook today. Neither residents nor a single surviving house remained in the settlement where once more than 700 people lived. The video quality is not very good, but it gives a good impression of the toll the war inflicted here. Since the video is 2 minutes long, please check it out in detail if you are interested. Kremina. Ukraine reported repelled attacks near Kremina and Dibrova. Not much information is coming out of here. A Russian offensive is expected, but we cannot be sure whether it has already begun or Russia is still setting it up. Russian military activity has already gone up, though. Bakhmut. Repelled attacks were reported at Krasnahora, Bakhmut and Ivanivske. Heavy battles rage near Ivanivske and in the northern and southwestern suburbs of Bakhmut. Pavlo Kirilenko, head of Donetsk Oblast Military Administration, has said it is possible that Russian forces might capture Bakhmut, but he remains skeptical regarding the possibility of Russia's plans to seize all of Donetsk Oblast. The commander of the ground forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Colonel General Oleksii Danilov, visited units in the hottest areas along the front and spoke with their commanders. According to reports, Russia is suffering heavy losses for their small advances around Bakhmut. Now, a quick look at the article I want to point out. During their retreat from the city of Balaklia in Kharkiv Oblast, the Russian occupiers left behind a flash drive containing hundreds of various documents. These documents proved invaluable and helped to identify several FSB officers who supervised the actions of the Russian army in the occupied city. It is suspected that the flash drive belonged to a deputy commander responsible for propaganda work of the Balaklia military group. While the original article is in Ukrainian, the Ukrainska Pravda translated most of it. Please give it a read. To start the news segment, a look at all the minor news out of Ukraine. The Cabinet of Ministers approved the appointment of 3 heads of military-civilian administrations in the Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson oblasts. Serhiy Lysak for Dnipropetrovsk, Yuri Malashka for Zaporizhia, Oleksandr Porkudin for Kherson. President Zelensky later signed the decrees officially appointing the 3 new heads. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian parliament appointed Ihor Klimenko as interior minister and Vasyl Maliuk as head of security service. The parliament also voted to extend both martial law and mobilization for another 90 days. US President Joe Biden is expected to visit Poland in late February, around the anniversary of the start of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine. However, the Polish Committee on Foreign Affairs does not expect President Zelensky to meet with President Biden, as it was reported several days ago. Oleksii Danilov, Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, reacted to a statement by Dmitry Medvedev, Deputy Chairman of the Security Council of the Russian Federation. Medvedev talked about how the remnants of Ukraine will become the new South Korea. Danilov responded with, "Ukraine is not Korea. There will be no 38th and other parallels, other people's stories and scenarios imposed from the outside. The coordinates of the movement of the Russian warship are set, no changes are provided, and the defense forces of Ukraine are working." Danilov further stated during an interview with CNN that Ukraine will eventually receive American-made F-16 fighter jets and that the country already has weapons capable of striking inside Russia. Late in the evening, Russia has launched an attack on Kharkiv using 6 to 10 S-300 missiles. Citizens are urged to stay in shelters. Information on damage and casualties is being clarified. Next up, the latest regarding the situation in the occupied territories. Russian occupation authorities are detaining money changers who sell Ukrainian currency in occupied territories. Entrepreneurs are robbed of bank terminals and are fined for hundreds of thousands of rubles. Petro Andriushchenko, advisor to the mayor of Mariupol, once again reported explosions in the occupied city. He also stated that after the explosions, Russian aircraft took off. Russian jets are allegedly being purged of any mention of the explosions. 2 Russian soldiers were sentenced today to lengthy prison terms for refusing to fight in Ukraine. The trial took place in occupied Sevastopol in Crimea. Moving on to the news updates from Russia and Belarus. Russian activist Ivan Losev, famous for receiving a fine for his stream about President Zelensky, has been fined again for giving an interview about the fine he received. Losev once again was found guilty for discrediting the army. The Ukrainian intelligence has published an order dated February 4, 2023, signed by the Prime Minister of the Russian Federation Mikhailo Mishustin, on granting Gazprom the right to establish its own private military company. Russian authorities have ordered the inspection and repair of bomb shelters throughout the country on the background of the war in Ukraine. The inspections are taking place even in the most remote oblasts of the Russian Federation. Sergei Shoigu, Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, introduced a proposal on amendments to the law on the procedure of providing military and civilian personnel to participate in peacekeeping activities. Currently, only contract workers and those who have undergone special training can participate in the peacekeeping missions of the Russian Federation on a voluntary basis. The proposal would allow sending all military personnel, including conscripts. Shoigu further announced the creation of an all-weather remote sensing satellite system to improve the efficiency of Russian troops. No more details were disclosed. Russia has withdrawn all missile carriers from the Black Sea due to bad weather conditions. Natalia Humenyuk, head of the Joint Press Center for Operational Command Pivden, said, "A powerful storm continues to rage in the sea. As for the Black Sea, it is the most powerful one ever recorded." And to wrap up the news segment, the international developments. In Tokyo, on the annual Northern Territories Day, the Japanese government and civilian groups held a rally calling on Russia to return the illegally occupied Japanese islands off the coast of Hokkaido. It is noted that the wording illegal occupation was used for the first time in 5 years. The German government has issued licenses to the country's defense companies to export up to 178 Leopard 1A5 tanks to Ukraine. According to the press release, the German federal government supports Ukraine in close coordination with international partners by supplying Leopard 1A5 main battle tanks for legitimate self-defense against the Russian war of aggression, which violates international law. It was further reported that the Netherlands, Denmark, and Germany will work together to transfer about 100 Leopard 1 tanks to Ukraine. During a visit to Kiev, Boris Pistorius, German Minister of Defense, has announced that the delivery of German Leopard 2A6 battle tanks to Ukraine is planned for the end of March. The Bundeswehr has begun testing the new self-propelled artillery system RCH-155. Ukraine is expected to be the first country to receive them. The RCH-155 is capable of automatically firing 9 rounds per minute, which hit targets at a distance of 40 to 50 kilometers or even more, depending on the type of ammunition. The vehicle, which weighs almost 40 tons, has 8 wheels instead of 2 tracks like the Panzerhaubitze 2000 and is therefore very mobile on the road and can reach speeds of over 100 kilometers per hour. The Ministry of Defense of Lithuania reported on Facebook that the country has sent dozens of L-70 anti-aircraft guns with ammunition to Ukraine and trained Ukrainian instructors in handling these weapons. And now for the Intelligence Report segment, starting as usual with the UK Ministry of Defense. It is highly likely that Russia has been attempting to restart major offensive operations in Ukraine since early January 2023. Its operational goal is almost certainly to capture the remaining Ukrainian-held parts of Donetsk Oblast. Russian forces have only managed to gain several hundred meters of territory per week. This is almost certainly because Russia now lacks the munitions and maneuver units required for successful offensives. Senior commanders likely make plans requiring undermanned, inexperienced units to achieve unrealistic objectives due to political and professional pressure. Russian leaders will likely continue to demand sweeping advances. It remains unlikely that Russia can build up the forces needed to substantially affect the outcome of the war within the coming weeks. A look at the latest assessment by the Institute for the Study of War. The researchers point at the assessment by Ukrainian officials that Russia is preparing to launch a large-scale offensive in the near future. However, they also point at select Russian nationalist voices who are doubtful that Russia is even able to launch any successful offensive in February. The Institute further discussed the continued efforts by Russian occupation authorities targeting children and teenagers in occupied territories with rehabilitation schemes. The analysts have previously pointed out that these schemes are being used to remove children further into Russian-controlled territory or even deport them to Russia. The Russian Commissioner on Children's Rights, Maria Lvova-Belova, is likely working under direct orders by Russian President Vladimir Putin to institute several social institutions and programs targeting children and collecting their personal data. It is suggested this is to set conditions for deportation and adoption of Ukrainian children into Russian families. And to wrap up the report, the evening update by the General Staff of Ukraine, which today was very short once you remove the shelling report. Basically, just one sentence was left. In Melitopol, the occupiers force employees of state institutions who have received citizenship of the Russian Federation to renounce their Ukrainian citizenship in writing. They are threatened with dismissal if they refuse. And that wraps up today's news report. Should you be interested in any of the articles I mentioned, I included links to them in the description as always. Thank you for tuning in and have a great day. You were listening to The Account. Slava Ukraini.